What if the most wonderful night of the year became the last night of your life? Christmas Eve. It's supposed to be about family gatherings, midnight mass, last-minute gift wrapping, and the anticipation of Christmas morning. But for some people, Christmas Eve has been the setting for their worst nightmares. Tonight I'm sharing 5 true stories of terrifying things that happened on Christmas Eve. These aren't fictional horror movie plots. These are real incidents, documented, investigated, and in some cases, still unsolved. From home invasions that turned deadly to encounters with strangers that ended in tragedy, these stories will make you double-check your locks this holiday season. Let's begin with story number 1, the Santa Claus massacre. On Christmas Eve 2008, the Ortega family gathered at their home in Covina, California for their annual holiday celebration. It was a large gathering, approximately 25 people, including children. The house was decorated with lights, a tree stood in the living room, and dinner was being prepared. At around 11:30 p.m., there was a knock at the door. 8-year-old Katrina Yusufpolsky answered it. Standing on the doorstep was a man dressed as Santa Claus, holding what appeared to be a wrapped gift. Katrina smiled, excited to see Santa. The man raised a handgun and shot her in the face. Before anyone inside could react, the man, whose name was Bruce Jeffrey Pardo, forced his way into the house and opened fire on everyone in sight. He wasn't just armed with a handgun. He had multiple firearms, including a semi-automatic weapon. And the gift he was carrying wasn't a present. It was a homemade flamethrower. Pardo fired indiscriminately at the Ortega family and their guests. People screamed, tried to run, tried to hide, but Pardo methodically moved through the house, shooting anyone he encountered. When he finished firing, he unwrapped his flamethrower and used it to set the house ablaze. The flames spread rapidly, consuming the home and ensuring that anyone who survived the gunfire would die in the fire. Pardo then calmly walked back to his rental car, still wearing the Santa suit, and drove away. By the time firefighters were able to control the blaze and enter the home, 9 people were dead. Some had been shot. Others had burned to death trying to escape. Katrina, the little girl who answered the door, survived, but she was severely injured and would carry physical and emotional scars for the rest of her life. So who was Bruce Pardo, and why did he do this? Pardo was the ex-husband of Sylvia Ortega, one of the victims. Their divorce had been finalized just 1 week before Christmas. The divorce had been bitter. Pardo was ordered to pay Sylvia $10,000 and he'd lost his home. But even with that context, what Pardo did was beyond comprehension. The massacre became the deadliest mass shooting in Los Angeles County history at the time. Police launched a massive manhunt for Pardo, but they didn't have to look far. Hours after the attack, Pardo drove to his brother's home in the Sylmar neighborhood of Los Angeles. He went inside, sat down, and took his own life with a single gunshot. When investigators searched Pardo's belongings, they found that he'd planned the attack meticulously. He'd purchased airline tickets to Canada, intending to flee after the murders. He'd brought $17,000 in cash wrapped in plastic, presumably to take with him, and horrifyingly, he'd been dressed in a Santa suit specifically because he knew a child would answer the door, and children trust Santas. The Covina massacre left a community devastated and a family destroyed. Christmas Eve, a night meant for celebration and joy, had become a scene of unimaginable horror, and it all started with a knock on the door and a man dressed as Santa Claus. The house where it happened was eventually demolished. But the memory of what occurred there, of 9 people murdered on Christmas Eve by a man in a Santa suit, will never be forgotten. Now that was truly shocking. Let's move on to story number 2, the Macy's parking lot. Christmas Eve 2013. The Westfield Topanga Mall in Canoga Park, California was packed with last-minute holiday shoppers. The parking lot was full. People were rushing in and out with bags of gifts, trying to finish their shopping before stores closed for the holiday. Among those shoppers was a 24-year-old man named Gianni Belvedere. He was there with his girlfriend, Ilona Flint, doing some final Christmas shopping. It was supposed to be a quick trip, grab a few last items, head home, wrap presents, and enjoy Christmas morning. But Gianni never made it home. At around 7:45 p.m., Gianni walked out of the mall toward his car, a green Toyota Camry. Ilona was still inside the mall, finishing up. Gianni planned to meet her back inside in a few minutes. But when Ilona went looking for Gianni, she couldn't find him. His phone went straight to voicemail. She walked out to the parking lot and saw his car. But Gianni wasn't in it. A stranger was sitting in the driver's seat. Confused and frightened, Ilona approached the car. She knocked on the window, demanding to know where Gianni was and what this person was doing in his car. The man inside, whose name was Carlo Mercado, didn't answer. He just stared at her. Then, he shot her. Gianni's brother, Sal, had also been at the mall. He heard the gunshot and ran toward the sound. He found Ilona lying on the ground, bleeding. He saw his brother's car with a stranger inside. And before he could process what was happening, Mercado shot him too. Both Ilona and Sal died in that parking lot. Mercado then drove away in Gianni's stolen car. He didn't try to hide. He drove the car to his own house, even stopping at a gas station to fill the tank. Then he returned to the mall parking lot to retrieve his motorcycle, which had broken down earlier. Police arrested Mercado a short time later, but when they questioned him, they couldn't get any answers. Mercado couldn't explain why he'd killed 3 people on Christmas Eve. He had no connection to any of the victims. He'd never met them. He had no motive. There was a theory that Gianni's murder might have been related to a road rage incident earlier in the day, but this was never confirmed. Mercado refused to comment. He wouldn't cooperate, wouldn't confess, wouldn't provide any insight into what drove him to commit such senseless violence. Weeks later, on January 17, 2014, Gianni's body was found in Riverside, California, about 60 miles away from the mall. He was in the trunk of his own car. He'd been shot and left there to rot. Authorities ultimately classified the killings as random acts of violence. 3 people, Gianni, Ilona, and Sal, were murdered on Christmas Eve by a stranger for no reason. There was no explanation, no justice that could bring them back. Just 3 families destroyed and a community left with unanswered questions. To this day, no one knows why Carlo Mercado did what he did, and that's perhaps the most terrifying part of this story. Sometimes, there is no reason. Sometimes, violence is truly random, and sometimes, doing something as simple as walking to your car on Christmas Eve can cost you your life. Well, that's another unsettling story. I think we'll move straight onto story number 3, the doorbell that wouldn't stop. This story takes us back to Christmas Eve, 1878 in Brooklyn, New York. The Walsh family lived in a modest home on a quiet street. It was a typical Christmas Eve for the time. The family had decorated their home with garlands and candles, attended evening church services, and returned home to prepare for Christmas Day. But as the family settled in for the night, something strange began to happen. Their doorbell rang. Mr. Walsh answered the door. No one was there. He looked up and down the street, empty. He assumed it was neighborhood children playing pranks and went back inside. 10 minutes later, the doorbell rang again. Mr. Walsh opened the door faster this time, hoping to catch whoever was doing this. But again, no one was there. The street was silent. No footsteps, no laughter, nothing. The doorbell rang a 3rd time, then a 4th, then a 5th. Each time, Mr. Walsh would rush to the door, and each time, he'd find nothing. The family grew increasingly unnerved. This wasn't a prank anymore. It was relentless. The doorbell would ring every few minutes, with no explanation. Hours passed. Midnight came and went. Christmas Eve turned into Christmas Day. And still, the doorbell kept ringing. The Walsh family didn't sleep that night. They sat in their living room, listening to the doorbell chime over and over, while Mr. Walsh repeatedly checked the door to find no one there. The children were terrified. Mrs. Walsh was convinced someone, or something, was tormenting them. Then, around 2 a.m., things escalated. A rock smashed through the front window. The family screamed. Mr. Walsh grabbed a fireplace poker and ran outside, determined to find whoever was doing this. But the street was empty, no one running away, no signs of anyone nearby. Another rock crashed through a side window, then another. A family, huddled together in the center of their home, surrounded by shattered glass, as objects continued to be thrown at their house from seemingly nowhere. The attacks continued until dawn. When daylight finally broke, everything stopped. The doorbell went silent. No more rocks, no more sounds, just an exhausted, terrified family and a house with broken windows. The Walsh family reported the incident to the police, but no arrests were ever made. No explanation. No explanation was ever found. Neighbors reported hearing the doorbell and seeing the broken windows, but no one saw who or what was responsible. In the days that followed, the family tried to return to normal, but the psychological damage was done. They couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched, that someone or something was waiting for another opportunity. And then, on New Year's Eve, it happened again. The doorbell started ringing. The rocks started flying. And once again, no one was ever caught. The Walsh family eventually moved out of that house. They couldn't take it anymore. But the story of the Christmas Eve haunting spread throughout Brooklyn, becoming one of the most infamous unsolved mysteries of the 19th century. To this day, no one knows who tormented the Walsh family on Christmas Eve 1878. Some believe it was a disturbed individual with a vendetta. Others believe it was something supernatural, a malevolent spirit that fed on their fear. Whatever it was, it turned Christmas Eve into a nightmare that the Walsh family would never forget. And so to the second last story for tonight, the Midnight Mass Return. This story was shared anonymously on a true crime forum in 2019, but multiple people from the same town confirmed the basic details. On Christmas Eve 2006, the Patterson family attended midnight mass at their local church in a small town in Pennsylvania. It was a tradition they'd followed for years. Attend the late-night service, come home around 1 a.m., let the kids open one present, then send everyone to bed. That year, the family consisted of Robert and Linda Patterson, their 2 teenage children, and Linda's elderly mother, who lived with them. They left for church around 11 p.m., locking the doors and turning on the porch light as they always did. The service was beautiful, candlelight, hymns, a sense of peace and community. The family returned home just after 1 a.m., tired but in good spirits, ready to continue their Christmas Eve tradition. Robert unlocked the front door and stepped inside. Something was wrong. The house smelled different. Not bad, exactly, but off, like someone had been cooking, or like there was a faint smell of cologne or perfume that didn't belong. Linda noticed it too. "Do you smell that?" she asked. Yes. Robert told everyone to wait by the door while he checked the house. He walked through the living room and froze. Their Christmas tree had been redecorated. When they'd left for church, the tree had been decorated with their family ornaments. Handmade decorations the kids had made over the years, heirloom ornaments passed down from Linda's mother, and colorful lights. But now, the tree looked completely different. Someone had removed all of their ornaments and replaced them with new ones. Dark, disturbing ornaments. A miniature noose, a tiny coffin, a cracked porcelain doll with its eyes scratched out, ornaments shaped like crows and skulls, and at the top of the tree, where their angel had been, there was now a black star. Robert's hands were shaking as he called 911. Police arrived within minutes and searched the house thoroughly. They found no signs of forced entry, no broken windows, no picked locks, nothing. But they did find something else. In the kitchen, on the dining table, someone had set out 5 place settings, 5 plates, 5 glasses of milk, 5 napkins, and in the center of the table, a plate of cookies. Homemade cookies that smelled fresh, like they'd just come out of the oven. The Pattersons hadn't baked any cookies before leaving for church. On each plate, there was a handwritten note. The notes were addressed to each family member by name: Robert, Linda, their 2 children, and Linda's mother. The messages were simple, but chilling. "Merry Christmas. I was here while you were gone. I decorated for you. I hope you like it. A friend." Police found no fingerprints, no DNA, no evidence of who had been inside the house. The cookies were tested and found to be normal. No poison, no drugs, just regular sugar cookies. The Pattersons were told there was nothing police could do. No crime had technically been committed beyond breaking and entering. And without evidence, there was no one to charge. The case went cold. The family didn't sleep that night. They didn't open presents. They sat together in the living room, lights on, waiting for dawn. They eventually moved out of that house. Linda's mother said she'd never felt safe there again. She claimed she could still smell that faint cologne, the smell of whoever had been inside their home while they prayed at church. The story raises a terrifying question. How long had this person been watching them? How did they know the family would be at midnight mass? How did they get in without leaving any trace? And perhaps most disturbing, what if they'd come home early? The Pattersons never found answers. They just know that on Christmas Eve, 2006, someone broke into their home, redecorated their tree with macabre ornaments, baked cookies, and left notes that proved they knew every member of the family by name. And whoever did it was never caught. Now that's truly creepy, and it brings us neatly to our final story for tonight. This story, and it's called The Christmas Eve Caller. In December 2002, a woman named Rachel was spending Christmas Eve alone in her apartment in Seattle, Washington. Her family lived across the country, and she couldn't afford to fly home for the holidays. She'd made peace with it. She had a bottle of wine, a stack of movies, and plans to video chat with her parents on Christmas morning. At around 10:30 p.m., her phone rang. It was her landline. She still had one at the time because her cell service was unreliable in her apartment. She answered, expecting it to be her parents calling to wish her a Merry Christmas. Instead, she heard breathing. "Hello?" Rachel said. No response, just slow, steady breathing. She hung up, assuming it was a wrong number or a prank call. She went back to her movie. 10 minutes later, the phone rang again. House. She answered. Same thing, breathing, no words, no background noise, just someone on the other end of the line, listening. Rachel hung up again, this time more unsettled. She checked the caller ID. It showed unknown number. She decided not to answer if it rang again. But it did ring again, and again, and again. Every 10 to 15 minutes, the phone would ring. Rachel stopped answering, but the ringing continued. It became relentless. She unplugged the phone, but then her cell phone started ringing. Same unknown number. Same breathing when she made the mistake of answering. Rachel called the police. An officer came to her apartment, took a report, and advised her to keep her doors locked and not answer any more calls. He said he'd have patrol cars drive by her building throughout the night. The officer left. Right. Rachel locked her door, turned off all the lights except a small lamp, and sat on her couch, trying to calm down. At 11:58 p.m., 2 minutes before midnight, there was a knock on her door. Rachel's blood went cold. She didn't move. She didn't breathe. The knock came again, louder this time. Then a voice muffled, like someone speaking through fabric, said, "Rachel, let me in, it's cold out here." Rachel grabbed her cell phone and called 911, whispering frantically that someone was outside her door, that they knew her name, that she needed help immediately. The dispatcher stayed on the line with her. Rachel could hear footsteps in the hallway outside her apartment, pacing back and forth. The person tried the doorknob. It rattled but didn't open. Rachel had locked the deadbolt. Then the person started singing, softly, at first, then louder. Silent Night. The words were wrong though, distorted. Instead of Silent Night, Holy Night, the voice sang, Rachel's night, lonely night, all alone, filled with fright. Rachel was crying now, still on the phone with 911, begging them to hurry. Police arrived within 5 minutes. When they entered the hallway, no one was there. But they found something that made Rachel's stomach drop. A small gift box sitting outside her apartment door. Officers carefully opened the box. Inside was a single photograph. It was a picture of Rachel, taken through her apartment window earlier that evening. She was sitting on her couch, watching TV, completely unaware she was being photographed. On the back of the photo, written in red ink, was a message. "Merry Christmas, Rachel. I'll see you again soon." Police increased patrols around her building and dusted the photo for fingerprints, but they found nothing. No leads, no suspects. Rachel moved out of that apartment 2 days later and stayed with friends until she could find a new place. She never found out who called her that night. Who knocked on her door? Who took that photo? But she knows one thing. Someone was watching her. Someone knew her name. Someone knew where she lived, and someone wanted her to know they were there. Rachel doesn't celebrate Christmas anymore. She says she can't. Every time December rolls around, she remembers that Christmas Eve. The phone calls, the knocking, the singing, and the photograph that proved she'd been watched without knowing it. And she wonders, is that person still out there? Are they watching someone else now? Or are they waiting for the day they come back for her? Well, there you have it. 5 true stories of terrifying things that happened on Christmas Eve. From the Covina massacre, where 9 people were murdered by a man in a Santa suit, to random acts of violence in a mall parking lot, to paranormal harassment in 1878 Brooklyn, to a home invasion during midnight mass, to a woman terrorized by an unknown stalker. These stories remind us that evil doesn't take a holiday. Christmas Eve is supposed to be magical, but for the people in these stories, it became a nightmare they could never escape. If you're celebrating this Christmas Eve, keep your doors locked. Stay aware of your surroundings. And if something feels wrong, if you hear something, see something, or feel like you're being watched, trust your instincts. Because sometimes, the scariest monsters aren't fictional. They're real. And they're waiting for the one night when everyone else is distracted by the joy of the season. Stay safe this Christmas. And remember, not everyone dressed as Santa is bringing gifts.
Thanks for watching. Every ending hides the beginning of another tale, and ours is already on its way. Stay tuned. You'll find the next chapter right here, and soon.